Next up, we have the activist, Medicare for All advocate, host of the podcast Amped Up with Ryan Knight. It is Ryan Knight who has endorsed more than 35 down-ballot progressives in 2020 and is the leading national voice for the progressive movement and has been a tremendous organizer as well, along with so many other people, for the People's Convention. Ryan, it's all you.
We find ourselves in a moment of great struggle. We are seeing the climate crisis ravage our cities and towns. We are seeing a pandemic that has resulted in over 180,000 American deaths. We are seeing unarmed Black people being murdered by the police. We are seeing an immoral and rigged economy where billionaires like Jeff Bezos make $13 billion in a single day while working people struggle to build any real wealth. And rather than meet this moment of great struggle with bold policy solutions to move our nation forward, both corporate parties in Washington are doing what they do best, putting their corporate donors over the basic needs of the American people. And we need to be very clear about this because one of the corporate parties likes to sedate us with platitudes of hope and change. But make no mistake, they are bought and paid for by the very same corporations and oligarchs as the other corporate party in Washington. And progressive giant Henry Wallace warned us about this all the way back in 1948. That is how long this fight has been going on. When he said, and I quote, "Both parties are the champions of big business. The Republican Party admits it. The Democratic Party attempts to conceal it." And here we are 72 years later, and both corporate parties in Washington are still putting corporate interests over human interests. So it's time for us to fight back and build a party that is of, by, and for the people. Because here's the thing, if we are ever going to have a government that actually works for the people, and if we're ever going to fight back against all of this injustice and inequality, then you can't have two parties that both represent Wall Street. You can't have two parties that both represent giant corporations. One party has to represent the people. One party has to represent labor. And we don't have that, which is why nothing, and I repeat, nothing ever changes in Washington. So when people say that America is failing because of one corrupt president, they're completely missing the bigger picture here. America is not failing because of one corrupt president. America is failing because our entire system is corrupt. We had 40 years of failed trickle-down economics for the working class, and 40 years of bailouts, tax breaks, subsidies, and socialism for giant corporations in the ruling class. America is failing for the simple fact that we live in an oligarchy where both parties serve the ruling class. And we won't save this nation by just changing our corrupt president. We have to do so much more than that. We have to actually change our corrupt system and our policies, which are rigged to favor the ruling class. And the numbers tell the story here. The numbers don't lie. Over the past 30 years, the top 1% gained $21 trillion in wealth, while the bottom 50% lost a staggering $900 billion in wealth. And this massive wealth transfer didn't happen because the 1% worked harder than the bottom 50%. It happened because both corporate parties are owned by the 1% and passed laws that favor the ruling class and exploit the working class. It happened because they rigged the system against us. And now it's time for us to unrig it by breaking the duopoly and building a party that serves the needs of the American people. Because the simple truth is this, that we are all losing under the duopoly. Democrats, leftists, independents, and yes, even Republicans all deserve a better nation than this. And if we just step back and think about it in simplistic terms, how are we ever going to solve these systemic problems facing the nation when both parties are bought and paid for by the very corporations who profit off of these systemic problems? For example, how are we going to solve the climate crisis when both parties are in the pockets of the fossil fuel industry? How are we ever going to stop the racial injustice crisis when both parties are in the pockets of the for-profit prison industry? How are we ever going to stop the cost of healthcare crisis and the lack of healthcare crisis when both parties are in the pockets of big pharma and the giant insurance companies? How are we ever going to stop the economic inequality crisis when both parties are in the pockets of the billionaire class? The obvious answer to every single one of those questions is we won't. Nothing, and I repeat, nothing will fundamentally change in this country as long as corporate greed rules Washington. The only way to build a better America is by coming together and building a new major progressive party that is free of corporate money and free of corporate influence. And that is why this is our moment. This is our time. It is our moment to build a party that will unapologetically fight for the poor and the working class. It is our moment to build a party that will unapologetically fight for racial justice and economic justice and environmental justice. It is our moment to build a party that will unapologetically fight to raise the minimum wage to $20 an hour. It is our moment to build a party that will unapologetically fight for Medicare for all to save our people and a Green New Deal to save our planet. It is our moment to build a party that will fight for universal public college, trade, and tech schools so that workers have the tools to compete in this 21st century economy. It is our moment to build a party that will unapologetically fight to cut the Pentagon budget in half and finally end these endless wars. And it is our moment to build a party that will fight to defeat the duopoly in 2024 and free this nation from corporate rule. So I hope my message today is clear. It is time for the people to rise up, take our power back. It is time for the people to ask themselves, what kind of nation do we want to be? Do we want to continue to be a feudal nation, a plutocratic nation where just 2 billionaires now hoard more wealth than half of our country's entire population? Or do we want to be a free nation, a democratic nation, where our economy actually values and pays its workers a living wage, and where everybody has guaranteed health care? In closing, it is clear that the corporate parties aren't ready to meet this moment of great struggle with the bold progressive policies that we need to move this nation forward, but the People's Party is. We are ready to take on corporate interests and fight for the people's interests. We are ready to take on Wall Street's interests and fight for Main Street's interests. We are ready to take on the billionaire class's interests and fight for the working class's interests, because we believe, and I believe, that every single person in this country has worth and dignity, and it's time that we have a party that represents them and represents the people's interests of this nation. So I encourage you, go to peoplesparty.org right now. Join our fight to unrig this corrupt system and build a party, a government, and an America that we, the people, deserve. Thank you.